Jarret, let's talk about the perfect launch. What's the secret behind the perfect launch? Tell us all the details.
There is no the perfect launch, like absolutely not, right? There is only your perfect launch. It needs to be yours totally as a creator launching their offer. There's no secret recipe because each launch is different. Each one has its own hurdles, each one has its own successes. And it also can only be called a launch if it's actually launched, right? If the creator actually sticks to it and goes through with it and let's put themselves out there.
Let's maybe approach from the other side then. What are some mental blocks that you see creators face before launching, and how do you help them to overcome these?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. There's loads of mental blocks, right? Feelings of overwhelm, perfection paralysis, lack of digital confidence, like imposter syndrome. These all show up in different ways, right? And because of different reasons, right? So a lot of the mindset that I try help creators adopt is to overcome these feelings, right? It's about saying, do I need 10 different tools to launch? No, right? Do I need all of this to be absolutely perfect? No, right? Done is better than perfect. So we have to move through all of these blockers and the way they appear in their day to day and why the reason of not launching is present.
I mean, it sounds almost like one of these motivational videos where like, hey, done is better than perfect, just do it, right?
Yeah.
But let's say, what do I practically do if let's say I don't know that I have perfection paralysis? What should a creator look out for in order to make sure they're on a good track?
If you to keep yourself on track, there's a lot to it, right? But maybe what we should be looking out for in the beginning is like, I don't know, I've got perfection paralysis. I don't know that I've got this imposter syndrome, right? Yeah. How does this show up in a day to day, right? What are the things that I, as a creator, am saying to myself, or the excuses that I'm saying? What are those, right? And these can look at like so many different things. I don't have enough time, right? That's a huge one. I just don't have time, which is just a symptom of the perfection paralysis or an imposter syndrome. There's things such as, what are some of the other ones? I mean, now I'm having like a bit of a blocker here, right? But there's all of these things that can show up differently. Um, all the excuses such as, I don't have enough social media followers. I've tried before and it didn't work, or I don't like sales call. These are how they show up, right? And it's about being honest with yourself and acknowledging you can have these feelings. Of course, you should have these feelings, right? Feeling the fear, doing it anyway. And yes, man, maybe it does sound like like those motivational things, but it's probably, if we think back to the mindset, it's about adopting a mindset that is good enough, right? It's a good enough mindset. Of course, you want perfection, but that is not going to happen in the beginning. It's good enough, launch it. It's good enough, post the post. It's good enough, put the reel on Instagram. It's good enough, hit the live button to go live on Instagram. Just do it. Like simply move through those, feel the fears that you have anyway, and go for it. That's really what we do and how I help our creators is just saying, let's do it. I'm here with you.
Okay, love that. So the last thing that you just shared essentially says accountability. So you as a coach, mentor, you're helping them to progress, to hit that milestone, to just do it. And that is really valuable because otherwise they would just like go in circles forever. Then the second thing that you shared is I don't have time, I don't have time, I don't have time. I have the same issue, right? I also don't have time because I'm also father of two. Then there is the partnership, right? Then there is food you have to eat, morning, lunch, dinner. Then there's all the things in the calendar, the meetings, the emails, the notifications, all the tools, my projects, the small things, the big things. It is crazy, right? And I always feel like overwhelmed, like I don't have time. Ultimately, what I always say if I hear myself saying I don't have time is, okay, I don't prioritize this because I'm prioritizing clearly something else because we all have the same amount of time. And if I don't have time, that means I do something else with my time. So I'm not prioritizing it. It's very simple. But I also have to confess that it is fucking overwhelming as a creator to do it all. if you're starting
Totally.
out, you're super inefficient. You kind of like feel that you're not moving towards it, even though it's part of the journey to do all of these things. And then later it's still like that because you're almost by yourself in all cases. Even if you make seven figures, you have a few contractors, you all still have the family and everything. You still like don't have time. And I think in all my interviews with $1 million creators and people on that on their journey towards it, I always see the thing as I don't have time, I don't have time, I don't have time. So moving from also selling time to selling product is one of the reasons why people are here, right? But
Totally.
it's just not done with a snap. And I think having also that mindset of knowing that you have to spend time and invest in it in order to spend less time on it in the future is I think also something. So going into this creator mindset is maybe like the third thing I want to quickly like make a comment on what you shared. And the creator mindset is so interesting because when I started posting content, I tried also to do everything in perfection, like the filming, the editing, the sounds, the filters, the content, the conceptualization of all of these things. And then all of a sudden the day's over and I haven't shipped anything to the market, right? Like, and we're like, okay, tomorrow, right? And so on and so forth. Now with all the experience, what I'm realizing is the creator just creates all the time. Like I essentially create content all the time. I've like produced likely today already 6 hours of content. I'm going to ship it, most of it tonight. So what I'm doing as a creator is actually I'm creating. That's why it's called a creator. So I'm doing this, but I'm not just creating it. I'm also shipping it, and I'm
Yeah.
constantly doing. That's what I'm doing every single day. So um, by having this new philosophy of everything goes out, what I do immediately, I feel much more like a creator. At some point, it just clicked, but it was a habit, a new way of doing things that had to be established. So I think it's almost like maybe it's the last thing I'm sharing here, and then we can move on.
No,
It's
good.
almost like levels, where in the beginning everything is painful and failure and sucks and difficult and feel like a loser and all of that. But then, like if you start playing football, you cannot kick a ball. But then at some point you can kick, you can dribble, you can do all these things. You get really good. You can all of a sudden win against someone or even a game and so on and so forth. So it's just about practice ultimately. So getting the quantity and the quality. Doing the quantity will lead to the quality. It's one thing I learned as well.
That's actually super cool because like exactly what I was going to say. Like if you're not doing right, and in your case creating and putting it out there, there's no ways that you're going to get better, right? You can only reach that your perfect launch, right, when it becomes habitual, like you say. You're doing it on a daily basis. You're creating and you're putting it out there so that you are setting yourself up for success, right? And that maybe is also when you are first putting your posts out and things, you have to accept that setbacks and failures are part of it, right? You
Yeah.
have to accept that it's not going to go perfectly, which is totally fine. But it's about having those opportunities to then have growth and that you can move forward in a sustainable way
Yeah.
for your creations, right?
And I think this is also the essence of the first pancake from Expert Unleashed Challenge, where the first one will suck. Everyone knows that. Like there, everyone knows. Like if you're not going to be a 3-star Michelin chef when you do your first dish. It's just like yeah, obviously, right? Like, why do we talk about
Yeah,
this? But then at the same time, when you build your fucking course, then all of a sudden you're like very different. It has to be like perfect, right? When you launch it. So
yeah.
getting in this mindset of done is better than perfect, in the connotation of, you know, an analogy where you know that you have to practice and it's like so obvious you wouldn't even question it. Applying that same thinking also to the stuff that you bring out there is, I think, key to ultimately get to the quality.
Couldn't agree more. And it's about taking those first steps, right? Of saying, okay, I'll put this one out today. I've created this, not sitting on it like you're not doing, right? You're creating, you're putting it out the same day. Like I'm a creator in my personal time, if you want to call it that. But I've got hard drives full of photos and videos, but they just sit on there. So like it's about having create, put it out there, move on to the next creation. Because the more you do, the better you get at it, the more perfect or close to perfection you will become.
Right. You know what helped me is actually, and I had this even this week. I had a really long to-do list of things that I want to shoot this week, because, you know, like you have to post so much. Just one post is not enough. Like the best people do 300 posts a week. So I have to like do all these things. And I got so stressed out on Tuesday, which is yesterday. I'm like, shit, well, what do I do? And then I started putting the things that I thought are most important in the calendar. And I really allocated time for every single video. And then I tried to really nail it and make it happen in that time. And actually what happened is, in that moment when I had in the calendar, it was even before I did all of these stuff, I felt so much more relief and stress dropping off me, because I'm like, oh, okay, I thought about it. These are the important things. They're in the calendar. I will do them at these times. And I'm like, ooh, much less stressed out about it.
Yeah.
And I think that's just like was a little hack this week. Just had to share it, where I'm like, okay, this is also now. And then I'm racing against these little deadlines that I set myself. Otherwise, I'm just spending the whole day on, I don't know, filming a TikTok or whatever. And all of a sudden it's 5 p.m. Then the family break starts at 6 p.m. Like, shit, just on one TikTok, not even aired this thing. I'm a fucking loser. Right. But if I time box it, um, I think all of a sudden it works like magic. I mean, sometimes you're not able to hit the deadline, but I get much more done. I would say 10x.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to the prioritization. You knew what you needed to do, right? And you put it in your calendar. So already it's not something in your mind like, oh, I've got to do all of these things. I've got to do this. You did like your own mind prioritization. You put in your calendar. Immediately you don't have to think about it, right? So
Yeah.
it's planning. You're just planning it out in a really good way for yourself to remove that stress.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Because especially in my head, if there are like 55 things going on, if I don't have a system, I'm just mentally not in the best mood or
Yeah,
state.
no, me too. Me too. And my mind can run a million miles an hour. And the best thing I do is write it down, put it in my
Yeah.
calendar. Otherwise, it just sits there, right?
Let's take it one step further. These
Yeah.
launches, right? Or let's say producing, shipping content and so on. Let's talk about these. Let's talk about setbacks and failures to take it one step further. You're saying that these are like inevitable. They will happen either way. But shouldn't you help creators to avoid these setbacks, considering that you have done so many launches with creators, so many products with creators, that you just help them to not fuck up and just like get it right from the get-go?
Yeah. And like in an ideal world, I'd like to say, yes, that's it. You've got it. Like I'm the secret recipe. But no, that's not reality, right? The reality is there is no the perfect launch. So I can't take a blanket blueprint and say, follow this, right? But we can create for a creator their perfect launch, right? They can stay with theirs, make it unique, make it their own, and do it, right? With me helping them accountable, right? And making sure they're not thinking about having a form that connects to this platform that connects back in here, because they ultimately don't need all of that. You can scrap that all back, right? So setbacks and failures, yes, inevitable, right? But we can make a process where you're focusing on what really matters and planning to get that done, right? And not trying to do it all at once, because then you're just going to be always planning to do it all at once, which you'll never get anything done. You'll never move past that stage. And I've seen it countless times, countless times.
Okay, so let's talk about planning then. Isn't that overwhelming, like in itself, to like plan all of these things out? Feels like 100 things are important here.
Yeah, it is. It can be overwhelming, but it's about, again, taking it from your head, putting it down in a way that makes sense, and then cutting the fluff, right? Like what I normally do with creators, we'll say, all right, you want to launch. Amazing, right? That's always music to my ears, right? That means you're ready to put down a date. So let's put down that date, right? We write down the date. We say that's the goal we're going to launch. And we work backwards from there, okay? We'll say you need like 5 to 10 days of hype building on your social media. You need this landing page so that you can take payments, or you need this booking form, but keeping it simple, right? And we might end up with a list that is 100 long, like you just said. But then we can realize that, oh, we've only got a month. 100 long list isn't possible, right? It's really not going to happen. So let's scrap what we don't need. Let's figure out what we do need so that we can hit that end goal, right? Because if we keep moving that end goal, trying to fit in all these 100 things, it's just going to be moving the end goal, not ticking off 100 things. No one can do 100 things at once. No one.
Okay. Any tools that we could use here to ease the process?
Oh, yes. There's one that I learned through my wife probably about a year ago, and I quickly adopted it and I quickly shared it with our creators, and it really works. The Eisenhower matrix, there's many different forms of this. It's essentially a 4-quadrant square, right? And you use this to prioritize. I've helped creators do this like on digital platforms like Miro and things. And I've also helped creators to like, hey, step away from the computer for half a day, get out the big notebook, like the big whiteboard, draw it there, sticky notes wherever you are, and really go into what is priority, what is something you don't need to do, what can you delegate to someone else, like those type of key moments, so that when you're doing your daily tasks, you're actually moving towards your goal, which is in this case a launch date, right? That you're using your time perfectly.
Can you screen share a practical example?
Sure. So this is the Eisenhower time matrix, right? And you can see there's 4 quadrants: do, decide, delete, delegate, right? There's an importance scale and there's the urgency scale. So if it's really important and it's really urgent, do it. If it's not urgent but important, decide when to do it, schedule it, take it from your mind, put it in your calendar, right? If it's not so important but urgent, delegate, right? If you have an accountability person that helps you, maybe they can help. If you've got a team that's helping you launch, ask them. And obviously the other one, which is a pretty amazing one, the feeling you have by removing things is just amazing, right? Not important, not urgent, delete it, right? This is what I talk about, cutting the fluff. You don't need every tool in the book. You really, really don't. Delete it, move on.
Love that. Fun fact, we created an Eisenhower Metrics deep dive video. Check the description below or click on the link. And then you can actually experience how to take the how to use the Eisenhower Metrics for your creator business. So it's really tailored for creator businesses and how to practically apply the metrics for you. If you start out, if you scale, check it out by clicking the link.
Yeah,
Okay,
amazing.
let's go on. So let's say, so now that I've planned it all out and I'm feeling pretty good about it, what's next?
It sounds so lame, right? But sticking to the plan. You say you want to post on Instagram, just post it. You want to launch on that date, so that's the goal. Just keep doing the small steps, right? The plan should be broken down into bite-sized chunks, right? That is the goal here. We want you to do what you've planned out, complete it, tick the tick box, feel that momentum building, because momentum equals motivation, right? So as you're moving and as you're completing your daily tasks, all of a sudden, those daily tasks, you've done a week of tasks, and all of a sudden you're 1 week closer to your launch and you've done everything. The feeling of that is just indescribable, because that momentum builds, and ultimately one day maybe you will have the secret sauce for your perfect launch. That's the only way.
Well, let's say, what are the 5 takeaways? If you would sum it up, that creators should be aware of in order to have the perfect launch, which doesn't exist. How would you
Yeah.
summarize it?
So if I had to summarize the perfect launch, right, it would be getting real with yourself and being honest, right? Setbacks and failures happen. It's totally cool, right? It's all good and it's part of it. It's the cost of learning, school fees of life, if you will.
It's one
Right?
step closer to success, essentially, right?
It is one step closer to success, 100%. Okay.
Yeah.
Number 2, adopting the mindset that it's good enough, right? Adopt that mindset, roll with it. Don't get overwhelmed by trying to plan out 100 things to do in one day. It'll never happen. So use a tool like the Eisenhower Matrix. Plan out what your priorities for that day, for your week, for whatever time frame you need, so that you can actually stick to a realistic plan. Because if you have a realistic plan, that means you can, probably the fourth takeaway, complete what you've set out to do, feel the momentum, achieve those goals, and ultimately get to the success of launching and hopefully your first sales.
Yeah, I love that. One thing to add, I think there's a saying: if you're not embarrassed when you bring your content out there, then you're too late. Like you didn't do it in time. One thing to add here is I always try to get stuff, let's say, almost a bit more like, okay, I just don't have shame enough. I could still be better, but like it's fine. It's just like I like it works for me. But then the interesting thing is, 3 months later, even 3 weeks later, I look again at that content. I'm like, holy shit, that's cringy. That's like, oh, right? But it's a good sign because that shows
Yeah.
that actually I've leveled up significantly. I'm now so much further and more advanced. And that just shows the power of getting it out, getting it out, getting it out, getting it out. And you will grow naturally and become more successful because your product will become stronger, better quality, and be a better fit with the market. And with that, dollars, revenue, income will follow, and you will ultimately crack 4 figures, 5 figures, 6 figures, 7 figures, and beyond.
And beyond. Love that.